Hello, everybody, and good morning, and welcome back to All Things Medical Assistant. I am Santino Tejas, your host for this podcast. And first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for sticking around and coming back to listen to what it is that I have to say. And if you're a new listener, please, by all means, if you find this podcast interesting, continue to listen. And if you know of anybody that might be interested in a podcast like this, please, forward on, recommend, I would appreciate it very much. So last week I did announce that previously I'd launched a website for All Things Medical Assistant podcast. It is allthingsmedicalassistant.com. Again, that is All Things Medical Assistant, one long word, .com. And it is a website that hosts all of my episodes that have been created and uploaded so far, and in chronological order. And again, I'll explain. People ask me, well, why did you create a website if you've already got a podcast going? Well, if you listen to me through Anchor.fm and you wanted to send a message, and you wanted to reply or comment to something that I said, or you had just something to say, there's an option to send a voice message on the app or desktop. If you listen to me through Apple Podcasts, there's no way to communicate with me, so that's out of the question. So if you go to allthingsmedicalassistant.com, you'll find underneath every episode, there's a little narrative. Underneath the narrative, you'll find a space to leave a comment. It'll ask you for your name and email address, and I'm here to assure you that I don't sell, share, or do anything with that information other than use it to reply back to you. And once I receive your feedback, I'll go ahead and host it on the next podcast, on the next episode. And this is because my intention for starting this podcast, not only to voice the life of the medical assistant in my perspective, hopefully to get other medical assistants on board, but it's to start a dialogue. It's to start a conversation with people, whether they agree, disagree, they're offended, I've pissed you off, whatever. It's to get engaged with you and talk to you. So it's not just so much about listening to my opinion, but it's also a matter of talking to you. So sorry, I just shook the whole table. So if you're on the run, if you're driving, if you're listening while you're jogging, or if you're just in a situation where you're like, oh man, I wish I could send a comment or something. Well, now you can just keep in mind allthingsmedicalassistant.com, get to your home office or on your phone, and look for that episode or listen to them all again, and you can submit that comment, and I'll go ahead and again I will go over it, and I will premiere it at the next podcast. Okay, and that's a promise. So please, again, if there's anything to say, if there's anything to mention, please go ahead. And this journey so far, I believe this is episode 11 in the first season. It's been great. I've not had anybody communicate with me yet, so it's either I'm making sense or I've not hit a nerve with anybody yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay. So today, again, I want to talk about how today's state of the nation is affecting me as a medical assistant, in my job, in my career, in my ability to provide, excellent patient care. So, I'm assuming that almost everybody, has or works with Black coworkers. There's a few that I have that work with me, a few a coworker, a peer who are Black, and we work together very frequently, and we see each other very frequently, and um, and communicate very well with, and work very well with. Well, with with everything that's happened with George Floyd, I mean, it's obviously put the Black community on edge, and rightfully so. They have the right to be on edge, and what's going on within the Black community I'm talking about, and I'm not being assumptive here, but I'm just, going again by common knowledge, and what I see is that, they're they're taking another part of history out and saying, well, this is repeating itself again, and they're mourning, and they're just tired of it. I mean, we've been put in a position with this whole COVID thing, and we've been put in a position um, with having a quarantine and everything. Everybody's already on edge, so this comes along, to a minority community, ethnicity, and yeah, I mean, it's going to send them into a it's going to upset them very much. And what trust in law enforcement or government are you going to have when it hasn't been there to begin with? And again, common knowledge and history and everything that I've studied, you know yeah, everything that's happened to them, from the slavery, from impedance and in education, or career wise, it's all a real thing. And you can't sit there and disregard or diminish that, because it is a real thing. um Me being Hispanic, especially here in a primarily Republican state, I even feel it as well. Within my own ethnicity, that underlying sense of racism and hate. But whatever, this is not about me. So yeah, so the Black community has every right to feel that the way that they do. You know, um, and I'll just say, everybody else, that's not Black, that are out there looting, breaking windows, hurting people, setting cars on fire, that's just ridiculous. All the peaceful Black leaders in our past, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, let's say, even Spike Lee, they use, their education, they use their point of sense and thought to try and advance their race and and the meaning of what it is to be a Black person. Now, obviously, there's been radical groups with hidden agendas and all that, just like with within any ethnicity. But again, they have the right to feel the way that they do. And now how has that affected me as a medical assistant in my workspace? Well, it's put these individuals on edge. Again, I communicate very well with these individuals, and one Black coworker that I have, who's I'd like to consider him a peer. He's become reserved and very cautious and very jaded. And for him, it's history all over again, repeating itself. My other coworker, she's a lot more verbal about it. And she's not afraid to talk about it. you know, and you open that door, you better know what you're talking about, rather than trying to act smart. You're gonna get scolded and put in your place. So all those out you that pretend to know what's going on socioeconomically and politically and all that without any basis, I tell you, in this day and age, keep your mouth shut, because you're cruising for a bruising, and you're setting yourself up to lose some teeth. You know, but so how does that affect my job again as an MA? Well, I working with these people, working with these Black coworkers, the interaction within patient care has to be, at least on some level, very fluid, very approachable, very nurturing. I mean, outside of the clinic or the office, we don't have to like each other. But the good thing is, I really do like and care for these two Black coworkers that I have now. you know my other coworker, who's a little more verbal, she takes it more in stride, and the interaction and the approachability is a lot easier. So I really don't see a shift in the dynamic in working with each other. So and then and every once in a while, I'll make a good conversation if she brings it up. I'm not going to draw this stuff out of her, and make her talk about it, because again, I'm not going to assume that I know what's going on. Now, the other coworker that I have, like I said, he's very, he's become He's a reserved individual to begin with, but he does speak his mind, but he's very objective and he's very fair. But again, he feels like, history's repeating itself again, you know, one step forward, five steps back. And, with him during patient care, I have to be a little more, I guess, what'd you say? How would you say? A little more astute and, not as playful as I would usually be. I have to make sure that I don't, that I'm not too, I don't know, I guess, too aggressive or pushy when it comes to what it is that I need from him. I need to pick and play that battle as smart as I can, and understand that with what's going on right now, they have their right. I mean, what do we as a society expect with what's going on now? Do we expect this community to stay home and feel nothing and avoid people? No, opposite. They have just as much right to be out there, to feel the way that they do, to organize as they want to, and and get their point across, in a peaceful way, or in an educated way. But then we've got, like I said, all these idiots, of other races and ethnicity and backgrounds that are out there looting and everything, and breaking and damaging property. And I've talked to a couple, and they say, well, I have black friends. Well, so do I, but that doesn't mean that, I can jump on the bus to destruction and start, creating havoc, in my community, which in turn has done things like, created curfews. Why the hell should I have to follow a curfew because you don't know how to behave, because you don't know how to act, because you think you're supporting a race or a cause that you think you know about, and you really don't, because you're not that race. I'm Mexican American, Hispanic, Spanish. Obviously I am more adept and educated and knowledgeable about that. When it comes to the black community, the white community, the Jewish community, any community, I don't know as much about them as I do about me, and that's not my fault. I mean, the schools, the education system has taught me what they've taught me, but I only know what I know because of my experiences, my beliefs, how I was raised, the community I grew up in, the people I grew up with. And yes, I went to school with a wide variety of people, a wide variety of socioeconomic statuses. And, the common factor to getting along with all of them is respect across the board. You can't respect one, fear another, be aggressive towards another, or allow another to be dominant overall. That's just, no. It was never right and appropriate then. It is even more so not right and appropriate now. And then we have this, federal government, this administration that just, fuels the fire and, just takes and promotes actions, that makes the hate worse, and actions more despicable. And behind this guy, this leader, his people that are too chicken shit to stand up to him, um, they have their own followers, and then they think it's okay. And, and it's like, running with the bulls. You gotta watch out what you're doing, and watch your step. And that's not fair. That's not fair for anybody in society. When I receive a patient, who's black, I have to be careful. I have to be sensitive, not only to their need and their medical issue and what they're there for, but I got to make sure that, my conversation is appropriate. Now, more so, does it have to be, much more, in perspective and in line? Yeah, of course. Because, again, they're on edge. I'm not going to start joking and punching in the arm and rubbing elbows and, hey, friend, No, I'm not going to go around saying, hey, brother, I'm not their brother, or anything else, any other explicative. So, we have to understand that Diversity is a very beautiful thing, and diversity is what's made this nation. And diversity affects us in every way. Diversity affects us in everyday living. Being able to go to the store, being able to go to, your corner store, fill gas. If you have a community of multiple of societies and ethnicities and whatever, hating each other or on edge, nothing good is going to come of it at all. And again, if you're an individual that sits there and pretends to know and understand, and you have all the answers and whatever, and like I said, you're cruising for a bruise and you're about to get your teeth knocked out. It's very unfortunate, and it's way too bad that today we can't all just get along, understand each other, and be close to each other and support each other, and really, really just really love ourselves as a society. It's just unfortunate that we have to have a divide. We have to have silos and bubbles and boundaries and all that because of people's hate and ignorance, and because people want to pretend like they know what's going on. So at work, I have to be careful with my actions and with my my speech and my thought process, because it's very tense right now. Now, I'm not saying when they come in that they're all on edge like that, but still, I need to be sensitive to that. And this has nothing to do with patient sensitivity. It has everything to do with being sensitive to them being a human, to them being an individual. That's what it has, sensitivity to. That's what it's about. Now, has it made my job that much harder? No, it's made it a lot more, keeps me on my toes, and, it makes me having to keep everything in much more perspective. I'm not in fear. I'm not scared to work or speak or take care of, a Black individual or a patient, or, I would, if there was an accident and there were injuries and there were a multiple of races involved, I'd have no quarrels or problems treating everybody the same, going and treating medically everybody the same. Black, brown, white, yellow, purple, whatever. But it's just unfortunate that, we have to let everybody else's biases and ignorances blind us. Technology has a lot to do with that blame. The news has a lot to do with that blame. And that again, news and the news that we watch affects our work and our job, because somebody can come into work the next day upset about what's going on. And it becomes common conversation, and that conversation can strike, anger, fear, opinions, and it can just, turn what would have been otherwise a peaceful interaction into something that could potentially tear a working relationship apart. When I go to work every day and I'm on that freeway and I get off and I'm going to work, I'm thinking, okay, did I do everything? Did I do the best that I could yesterday? Did I treat everybody the best that I could have? Did I use as much, as much of my knowledge as I could? Well, I got to do better today if I didn't. And then when I leave and I go home, I think, did I meet that goal? Did I did I take that action to be a better medical assistant, to provide that better level of care? My answer every day when I go home is yes. It's yes. But again, on the way home, on the way to work, but on the way home, everything sinks in, because you come home and you have the TV, newspaper, if you read newspaper, radio in the car, everything, the reality sets back in. Because when you're at work, your reality is something else. But once you're returning home, it all comes back, and you got to think about again what's going on. You got to think about, well, shit. There's all these people protesting. They're breaking into businesses, breaking into homes. With our daughter here, it's a very scary thing. Very scary thing to think that, you know, she might get hurt. That we might go to the store and people of other ethnicities or races are ganging up to protest to show their support, and I and my little girl get hurt. Now, how did that better any cause? How did that make anything better at all? But strike more fear and hate in me for, or contempt for what you did to me and my child. Right? So I think we need to sit down, and this is my opinion, whether you want to do it or not, fine. But I think we need to sit down and really look at what's going on and try and be that human enough to say, hey, I'm going to put blinders on to the politics, to the hate, the racism, everything, and understand my community as people, as humans. Treat them as I'd want to be treated myself. Keep me and my family safe in this community, which I have the right to. You know, approach everything as it should be, with a grain of salt, with innocence. Now, unfortunately, there's bad people and crime and all that, whatever. You know, we'll handle that, whatever. But those of us that walk around with a chip on our shoulder, with a perceived notion that we know better than everybody, or we were, touched by angels and we know it all, or whatever, this isn't a time for that. And if you want to claim that you have a higher state of understanding, influence, and education, and you're not academically achieved, then it's nothing. Then it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Now, you can have experience in, anything in your work, or in, anything that might have to do with, the current subject. And yeah, I mean, I could refute something that you might do on a professional level. But when it comes to something that you just don't know about, but you want to act like you do, you need to stop that shit. You need to sit down. Everybody out there that wants to join a riot to loot and get free stuff, yeah, and you're the worst of it. So, again, we need to sit down and think about who we are as a people and look at ourselves and understand who we are. Because when we go out there with these actions, doing this, with these things, we're just as bad as, the worst. We're just as bad or worse than the worst. All right. So again, please, let's all just be better people. I don't think that's going to happen. Whoever's listening, watching it might stick to, it might give some